Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So far, we have around 100 participants. We are expecting around 400 participants, but we will keep the ball rolling until others join. It's 12 p.m. Eastern Time, and welcome aboard to GBRI's webinar, The Well Building Standard, Your Gateway to a Thriving Career in Health and Wellness. While we wait for others, we can give a quick intro about GBRI for those of you who are not familiar about GBRI. We are located in New York City with presence around the world. GBRI is an USGBC education partner, an AIA education provider, and education partners for other organizations you see here, such as the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the Rhode Island Energy Efficiency Council, and the Collaborative for High Performance Schools. Today's webinar would be a gamified one, meaning we would be doing a Kahoot towards the end of the webinar. I hope that we will have the time to do that. It would be a Kahoot with the leaderboard. And this webinar would be also available on demand as a recording within 24 hours after the live session. So if you are watching this webinar on demand or the recording, there is an optional Kahoot towards the end that you can participate from your smartphones. We have three expert speakers today. All participants who take part of the Kahoot and throughout the session answer all the questions will be eligible to self-report this webinar for 1.5 general hours. Certificate of completion will also be emailed to everyone within 24 to 48 hours. My name is Jeslin Varghese, and I will be the moderator for today's session. Joining me is a few of our experts from all around the US. So we have Carolina joining from Houston, Texas, Doug from Boston, Massachusetts, and Miranda from Idaho, Boise, Idaho. So I will go ahead and start the session now with going to the agenda. When I invite speakers, when they talk about their own segments, I will introduce them separately. With that, let's get started. So listed here is the agenda for our session. We will go through the wellness industry at large. We'll talk about where the industry is at this moment. We'll compare it between what happened during the pandemic and post-pandemic, and we'll go from there. We'll explore the Well version 2 in detail. We'll look at what are the different concepts under Well version 2. Then that would be the biggest segment for today's session. Following that, we'll look at what does it mean to become a Well AP, and if you are ready for one, and does it make sense to become a Well Accredited Professional. Towards the end of our webinar, we'll talk about how can GBRI help you in your wellness journey, be it becoming a Well AP or continuing your education with Well CE hours. We'll talk about all the options that we have. So let's start with the first part, the wellness industry. So we'll get into understanding how big the industry is, or where does the valuation stand. We'll start looking at pre-pandemic numbers before exploring the current valuation. So on the slide, first of all, can you see the screen with the graph? Perfect. Thank you, Carolina. On the slide, you're looking at a graphic that details the $4.2 trillion health and wellness economy. And this was reported by the Global Wellness Institute for the year 2017. This is a period we can refer as a pre-pandemic era, much before the pandemic, but for today's webinar, we're going to look at 2017 as a baseline. This chart provides an insightful breakdown of the $4.2 trillion, showcasing at the diverse sectors. There are 11 sectors in total that contribute to the substantial figure. These sectors include wellness real estate, which is a significant part of the built environment, wellness tourism, personal care, healthy eating and nutrition, fitness, and several others. Each segment is quantified, giving us a clear picture of how these diverse areas collectively form the expansive $4.2 trillion in 2017. Now let's look at the latest numbers. So this number over here come from 2023 study by the same nonprofit organization called the Global Wellness Institute. The study was released in November of 2023, and this study includes the numbers from 2022. So advancing to the 22 data, which was released recently, we can see a significant surge in the overall wellness industry size, escalating to 5.6 trillion. So this is the current market size. This represents an impressive growth of over 30% from the 2017 figures. Particularly noteworthy is the wellness real estate sector, which has seen a staggering growth of almost 200%. So to put these numbers into perspective and to better understand the scale of this growth, I have another slide where we look at each of these sectors side by side. So those of you who enjoy the analysis of numbers, this slide helps. On this slide, we delve into the comparative analysis of the two graphs previously I showed on the last slides, showcasing data from 2017 and 2022. The third column in this analysis presents the percentage change over these 5 years. As illustrated, the wellness real estate sector has experienced a remarkable growth of almost 200% compared to the 2017 data. This is closely followed by sectors like physical activity and healthy living, which have also seen significant increases. These trends, especially relevant to our discussion today on the well building standard, underscores how this is important in today's discussion. Now, if you're interested to see how these numbers translate to regions around the world, both pre and post pandemic, here is a graph from the study. So this one, if you closely look at it, they show numbers from 2019 versus 2022. It reveals that while all regions demonstrated a recovery since the pandemic, it is North America, Europe, and Middle East, North Africa region that have exhibited particularly robust growth and resilience during this period. Many of you, like myself, are also likely eager to understand where does this future lead? Where does the future trajectory of this global wellness market lead? Projections from the nonprofit organization Global Wellness Institute, the authority behind the studies we have been talking about, forecast that the wellness market could reach an astounding 8.6 trillion by the year 2027. This optimistic outlook is equally shared by other esteemed organizations such as Bloomberg, McKinsey, underlining this consensus. So we have more research on this topic. I didn't want to take more slides on this. We have more slides on particular data sets, which are again from the study. We also have some study on report on from other institutions like Bloomberg and McKinsey. So if you are interested, we can definitely share. I also notice a keen interest among attendees to get a copy of our slides. We are more than happy to share. We kindly ask that in return, you take a moment to review this course towards the end of today's session. All right. So what are some drivers? Like, we saw this growth. What are some drivers that it is behind this growth and which we believe would continue to grow? So on the screen, I have put, four major points. Underneath this, there are, of course, multiple other categories. Like, for example, heightened health consciousness. This is something even after the pandemic, people have become much more health conscious. They value health and wellness more than pre-pandemic. Rise of mental health focus, growing in terms of technological advancements, influencers on social media, celebrity endorsements, and of course, climate change. It has also influenced recognition that climate impacts health, driving the demand for a sustainable wellness solution. So these are all some drivers which would continue to send this market further high. Again, there are more a list of drivers that we would be sharing in another report. Stay tuned. We hope to publish this report maybe towards the end of this month. So now that we understand the market, where it is, and the drivers, I am curious now, and I would like to invite you all to pause and reflect. Let's ask ourselves a fundamental question. What does health truly mean to each of us? And what are the three words that spontaneously come to your mind when you think about health or healthy. This is also a good time for you to test the platform. You can enter your answer choices in the chat window. So I'll start by, okay, I already see some answers there. Okay, thank you, Carolina. What does health mean to us? So what does it first further come to your mind? So I'm going to put my thought, what I think about it.
We are having a shy public today.
I don't see any other responses. Let's see if
It
it
says the
almost,
chat is disabled, so
oh,
those were
really?
some
Okay,
notes. Those were
oh,
some
I
notes
see
in the
it.
queue. So they would probably have to use Q&A.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. Let me just see what happened there.
It could fail.
Okay, let's see. Can you all reply now? Let me see.
Some answers so far in the Q&A include longevity, being strong,
Okay.
having a healthy environment, being able to do physically and mentally what you want when you want, balance, care, non-toxic.
Thank you so much,
And
Miranda. Yeah, thank you for
yeah,
sharing that. I see it now. Very good. Yeah. Well, looks like we see a diverse range of responses from fitness, spiritual health. Well, it's clear that good health can have different meanings for each of us, right? So let's see, to provide a broader perspective, let's consider the definition from the World Health Organization. Health is defined as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well being, not just the absence of disease. I appreciate this holistic view, which emphasizes the importance of balancing physical, mental, and social well being to truly define what it means to be healthy. Now, let's look at another definition here, wellness. So this particular one is a concept of wellness extends beyond the conventional understanding of health. According to the Global Wellness Institute, same organization which we quoted for our report, wellness is a dynamic and conscious process. It's multidimensional. It includes physical, mental, environmental, social, emotional, spiritual aspects. So just wanted to cover that before we go into our session. So now that we understand what health means to us and what wellness is, why go for well or occupant wellness? Why should we prioritize well and occupant wellness? This is a critical question you may encounter as a sustainability or wellness consultant, and understanding the value of well certification would help you answer this question for your clients. We shape our buildings, and afterwards, our buildings shape us. This profound insight from Winston Churchill encapsulates the symbiotic relationship we share with our built environment. Given that we spend approximately 90% of our time indoors, the significance of buildings in our daily lives is undeniable. They are a silent backdrop to every chapter of our lives. Our homes provide space for rest and family bonds. Schools are a cradle for education. Offices, theaters, professional pursuit, everything happens within buildings. And these structures do more than just exist around us. They play a pivotal role in molding our experiences and, by extension, who we are. You heard companies proclaim their staff is their greatest asset. Well, I really hope that is true for them. And what I know for sure is true for most businesses is what we see here. This is from a study completed by the World Green Building Council, and this study is also available, the report. It shows staff costs such as salaries and benefits account for 90% of most business operational expenses. That's huge. Not only should people be seen as a key factor that makes a business great, but they truly are assets to the company if that significant amount of cash is directed at the people, especially the wellness. So, recognizing this intrinsic connection is essential when we consider the impact of well and occupant wellness in the places we inhabit and work. That said, let's jump into the next segment, Well version 2 Explained, introducing to the Well Building Standard. So at this time, I would love to introduce and welcome our first speaker, Douglas Leifer, PhD, Well AP, and a Well faculty. He's also a lead green associate. Doug is a professor and civil engineering consultant with expertise in monitoring and mitigating noise and air pollution impacts to population health. Doug has global business experience in more than 50 countries on 5 continents. Doug's licenses and certifications include EIT, PG, Lead AP, Well Faculty, and the list keeps growing. Doug holds an MS in Civil and Environmental Engineering and has earned his PhD from Tufts University in Environmental Health. He's an associate professor of engineering in Massachusetts, NECC, with previous professional industry experience in the environmental and life science industries. Welcome aboard, Doug, and the floor is yours.
Oh, we can't hear you, Doug.
I think you're on mute. Let me see.
No, he's not muted.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Thank you for the introduction, Jeslin, and thanks, colleagues Miranda and Carolina. Welcome, attendees. We're glad you're here today, and there's quite a few of you. This is wonderful to see that. Just a brief word before I present some content in the slides about my path to the WELL AP. My background, as you heard from Jeslin, is environmental engineering, and the focus of my work really is the nexus between health effects of air pollution and noise. And if you think about it, these are the #1 and #2, respectively, environmental stressors that contribute to the global burden of disease, air pollution and noise, and to which we are all exposed, some of us night and day. So my interest lies in those areas. And about 10 years ago, I pursued a lead green associate certification and achieved that. And then I started to think, well, what's the next certification that I should pursue in my field? And at the time, I was considering lead accredited professional, lead AP, but along came the WELL building standard and the WELL AP credential, and I felt that was a better fit for my career and for my expertise. So other faculty that you see here on the panel have lead AP accreditation. I have a WELL AP instead of a lead AP, and that seemed to be a better career path for me to add that to my certifications and credentials. So all that said, let me go into the slides, and I can share my screen, I believe, at this point. And can we see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, if I go to slide presentation, my notes disappear, however. So I am going to do that, and you can see the full slide, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk about the WELL building standard, and the particular version that we'll be discussing today is version 2. There was a version 1, and when we get into the course itself, the actual course that begins meeting next week, we'll talk about the difference between V1 and V2, but today we're going to explain V2. So what is the WELL building standard? It's based on the latest scientific research and best practices in industry. It's a global standard, similar to the LEED standard for energy efficiency. The WELL building standard is for occupant wellness and building wellness for those occupants who live and work and study and learn and otherwise spend much of their time in buildings that are certified by the WELL building standard and upon which the entire WELL ecosystem is built. The WELL building standard V2 differs slightly from V1, and let's focus on V2 today in that we have 10 concepts. And the 10 concepts are shown here. And each one of these concepts, we will give you a very high level overview today. We're not going to be going into too much detail of the concepts because there are 10 of them and time won't allow. But in the course that begins next week, we make a very deep dive into each one of the concepts and we'll explain how buildings and structures and dwellings that are seeking WELL certification can meet that certification by addressing preconditions and optimizations in these concepts. So I'll talk about that in a few minutes. So here they are. We have air, water, nourishment, light, and movement across the top. And across the bottom are thermal comfort, sound, materials, mind, and community. And the 11th concept, which you don't see here, is actually WELL certification, which we will briefly discuss today and again make a deeper dive into that in the course itself. So let's begin with the first concept, and the first concept that's dotted, circled here is air in the upper left, and we'll go through each one of these, and each of the speakers that you see here today will present their expertise in presenting each a high-level overview of each of these concepts. So I mentioned that the number one and number two stressors to global health and the global burden of disease are air pollution and noise. So air pollution clearly is number one. And I think if we look at air pollution, this is a major news item in the past several years due to wildfires and urban pollution due to combustion, transportation sources that are fueled by fossil fuel burning, gasoline, petroleum products. These all contribute to air pollution, and air pollution is responsible for hundreds of thousands of deaths in the United States, premature deaths, and up to 7 million global premature deaths worldwide. 600,000 of those are children under the age of 5. So this is a major contributor to the global burden of disease. And when we talk about air pollution, we typically think outdoor air pollution, whether it's smog or smoke or wildfire smoke or combustion pollution. And that's typically what we hear in the news. The WELL building standard does address that. And here are some of the statistics that we just talked about. It also addresses indoor air pollution. So indoor air pollution is very much a factor of outdoor air quality. So if outdoor air quality is degraded due to pollutants and combustion gases and particulates, then the intake of air into buildings is going to be compromised unless filtration and other measures are taken to purify it to the level that's acceptable. So indoor air pollution is a major aspect of the WELL building standard. And one of the things that is very important to focus on is the presence of particulate matter in indoor air, which is a factor of outdoor air as well. But indoor air can also be affected by off-gassing from materials, carpeting, paints, solvents that are used in building and construction, and indoor combustion sources such as burners and boilers, and then water leaks as well can affect indoor air pollution with respect to airborne mold. Another concern is volatile organic compounds, which we refer to as VOCs, and polyaromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs, and microbial pathogens. These are all constituents of indoor air, and some in very low concentrations and others in higher concentrations that are deleterious to human health. So why do we care so much about indoor air pollution? Obviously, we're concerned about outdoor air pollution. Well, people spend about 90% of their time indoors, and that's whether that's living, sleeping, cooking, working, studying, exercising. We the statistics show, bear out that people spend about 90% of their time in enclosed spaces, which, and they're breathing in indoor air that's recirculated or filtered or otherwise could be compromised. And so it's important to monitor and measure indoor air quality. And that's what the WELL building standard does. And so in the air concept, we have 14 features. So you'll start to see this now in each of the concepts: water and sound and mind and nutrition and others that we just showed you. You'll see a series of preconditions. These are our requirements in order for the WELL building standard to award a level of WELL certification to the project. Preconditions are required and optimizations are optional. And here they are listed for the air concept. So the first four are required preconditions. And in the optimizations, what you will learn in the course is that points are awarded for meeting optimizations. And those points will help enhance the level of certification for WELL building certification from bronze to silver to gold to platinum. So we're showing you now preconditions and optimizations for the air concept. Let's talk about, did I miss a slide? I don't think I missed a slide. No. Let's talk about the water concept next. And so I will discuss the water concept now. And water, there's a raised hand. Are we fielding questions or are we saving that for the end? Jeslin.
Yeah, so far we're good, Doug. I think we are answering the questions on the fly. Most of them are
Thank you.
general questions, but yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, towards the end, I think if attendees would prefer to come off the phone, if they want to ask the questions verbally, they can ask. Otherwise, they can share the questions in the chat, and Carolina and I am answering them now. But if they are pertaining to the section, then we can share it with you, Doug.
Thank you. Great. Okay. All right. Let's continue with the water concept. So the water concept is important because water quality in a building or structure or dwelling is of the utmost importance of safety and purity for the occupants of the building. And sometimes this leads to mistrust as to whether or not the water quality is adequate and healthy. And one of the byproducts of that could be a higher intake of non-water products, such as sugar-sweetened beverages, for example, and sodas. So the one of the main points of the water concept is to facilitate clean water and consumption of clean water by occupants of the building. And so the recommended daily consumption of water is about between 2 and 3.7 liters for adults, and that can change based on pregnancy status and age as well too. So this is the recommended daily water consumption. And it's important that the water delivered to a dwelling, a building, a structure that's occupied is pure and clean. And that's one of the assurances of the WELL building standard water concept. So when we look at the water concept, we have 8 features. 3 of them are preconditions that are required and 5 are optimizations. And basic water quality, drinking water quality are paramount and important. And just as an example of water quality in the news recently, not far from where I am in Boston, in New Hampshire, in the United States, was a case of Legionella. And that's commonly known as Legionnaire's disease. And this was at a resort. And in one of the spas, the water quality was compromised by bacteria, and Legionella bacteria can create Legionnaire's disease. And it's when that reaches the airborne phase from water, it can be breathed or inhaled and can create health problems and lung issues. And so this happened only about 2 weeks ago. So it's not so uncommon or rare of a condition that's waterborne disease. And so it's important to monitor water quality indicators, and have basic water management controls implemented as preconditions of the water feature. And the optimizations, which are optional, are shown here in the table. And now we are on to the next concept, which is nourishment. And we're going to pass this over to Carolina. And is Jeslin going to introduce Carolina?
Actually, it's Miranda, Doug.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Yes, it's Doug. Yeah, it's
That's
going to be
okay.
Miranda. Let me
Miranda.
introduce Miranda here. 1 second. Yeah. Thank you, Doug. So there's actually, while I wait for, introduce Miranda, there's a question for you, Doug, from a gentleman named Neeraj. I just shared that question in your chat. Do you
Okay.
let me know? Can you see it, or I can?
I'm looking at it right now.
It's an AQI.
Please elaborate about AQI composition of outdoor air. So it's a deep question, but the outdoor air composition is generally, it depends on the setting, if it's a rural setting or an urban setting, but generally what we're concerned about in outdoor air is fine particulate matter, PM10, PM2.5, that's the diameter in microns of the particles. And those are regulated pollutants. We're also concerned about oxides of nitrogen from combustion sources in automobiles as well, and sulfur dioxide and other compounds that are relating to industrial processes. There was another question about, is there any medium to control CO2 except through fresh air? So CO2 in the indoor air obviously builds up due to, that could be a byproduct of combustion as well too, but through occupancy, just the number of people that are occupying the space. And so it's really more of a fresh air intake control based on CO2 levels that are monitored by sensors. So I hope that answers that question.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Doug, for introducing us to the air and water concepts. As Doug mentioned, this is just a teaser from our end. We will be starting a course next week, a 6-week course on in-depth analysis on each of these concepts. So that is where we look at specifically into what are the WELL requirements for air, all the features, the prerequisites. So if you're familiar with LEED, there are prerequisites, right? Similarly, within WELL, there are preconditions. So Doug is going to run the air and water session, and Miranda is going to run the nourishment and thermal comfort session. So I'm going to introduce Miranda right now. I hope you can see my screen. Miranda is our latest faculty member who joined last year. She is a WELL AP, a WELL faculty, a lead AP, BDNC, and an NC IDQ. She is an associate clinical professor and director of the Interior Architecture and Design program at the University of Idaho. With over 25 years in architecture and interior design industries, she is certified through NCIDQ as a certified holder, lead AP, a WELL AP, and a WELL faculty member. As a design educator, Miranda has received award recognition including IDAC Teaching Excellence Award and the University Mid-Career Faculty Award. She holds a master's in architecture degree and specializes in design decision making for healthy interior environments. Prior to teaching, Miranda spent 8 years in private practice as a project manager, designer, and a lead AP on a variety of commercial and residential projects. So I am so excited to have her as part of our faculty group. I'm looking forward to her expertise in teaching students and also her skills on understanding the trends of what are that students are looking forward to. So with that said, Miranda, welcome, and I look forward to your session.
Thank you, Jeslin. And I am thrilled to join you all here today. So I'm going to now share my screen. So bear with me with a little transition here. There we go. Are you seeing the full screen now?
Perfect.
Okay, great. So as Jeslin said, I'm going to be introducing the concept of nourishment.
Miranda, we are seeing the one with the notes.
Okay, thank you. Screen 1, there we go. How about now? Good. Thank you. Super, super. So as I mentioned, I will be discussing the concepts of nourishment followed by light. And one thing that I think is really unique about the WELL Building Standard and something that I find really innovative actually is the inclusion of the concept of nourishment and looking at and considering and thinking about food in our environments and the role that food might play in overall well-being. A lot of my students ask or kind of inquire or are curious at first, like how their designs or how when we're considering design, building and planning and those phases, how does that impact food or vice versa and so on and so forth. And why was this a part of well building, the well building standard? And I think this is one big reason why, right? We do know that at its current state that food production remains one of the largest contributors to global environmental change. So we know about the environmental impacts for sure. But we also know that globally, we are facing a double burden of disease. On one hand, so much of the population is malnourished and suffering from micronutrient deficiencies, and yet we all, on the other hand, have this massive prevalence of overweight, obesity, non-communicable diseases, diabetes, several things that are related to food and to diet. And so if we are going to do what we do best and hopefully design spaces and places that are healthy for our users, then we really kind of need to consider this aspect of design and the role that potentially food could play. And so we know that healthy diets have the potential to nurture human health and to prevent several diet-related diseases, such as cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, and diabetes. And yet we also know that the opposite, unhealthy diets, pose a greater risk to morbidity and mortality than drug, alcohol, and tobacco use combined. So this is something that we really, really want to consider as we design our spaces and think about, if we can, maybe how could we give a little nudge to those users in our buildings to perhaps make the better choices and choose a healthy path. And how this is done, what I like to teach my students at this point, at this stage, is thinking about what role do buildings and our environments play in this. I introduce a concept called, if you've ever heard of it, choice architecture, or also referred to as the nudge theory. It's how a complex mixture of our decisions and environmental factors as we move throughout spaces and places can actually impact our choices. And so it's not required, right? We're not requiring people to make good choices, but we are maybe nudging them to consider what might be a better choice for them. We know that our dietary patterns are definitely influenced by this combination of personal, cultural, and environmental factors. And so the way the buildings and communities where we spend the majority of our time can in fact impact how we eat, who we eat with, maybe how quickly we eat, and other choices that we make. And so our food environments are designed and operated, as well as the availability to access foods and beverages in these environments, has the potential to support healthy diets and improve human health with the health of the planet in mind. And so some choice architecture examples that come up are, placing fruits and vegetables and things in a location that are more visible at eye level, or that are easier to get to. Perhaps some that are less healthy choices, a little more difficult, or you have to be very intentional to access those or reach for those environments. Research shows that individual change is more likely to occur when environmental conditions and influences are aligned to support individual behaviors. Therefore, improving diet quality and eating behaviors requires a holistic approach. So this might include policies as well as design factors and decisions, kind of a combination there, which you'll see throughout a lot of the well building concepts. Nourishment is a concept that supports healthy and sustainable eating patterns. Part of this has to do with access. So if you do provide food in your buildings, then this is where this applies, right? If there is food served, if there is an element of that, then nourishment comes into play. Why I think this is important is both professionally and personally. I'm sure many of you, like me, know someone that maybe has dealt with a disease, or like an autoimmune disease is very, very common and growing these days, tied to nourishment. There's also diabetes and an epidemic there. So I think that we just need to be aware that the more access to fruits and vegetables we have, and limiting the availability of highly processed foods, as well as designing an environment that nudges, again, that nudge theory, people to make healthier choices, then we can really encourage and create food environments where the healthiest choice is the easiest one. So this is a summary of that nourishment concept for you, just a kind of an overview. Like we said, when we do our exam prep training, we're going to go much more in depth. And this is one of the areas that I'll be covering in our first session. And nourishment, as we noted, has two preconditions: that element of providing fruits and vegetables and access, as well as transparency. Who doesn't want transparency, right? We all want to know what we're putting into our bodies as well as what we're putting into our buildings, but that comes later. And 11 optimizations. So these are where you can pursue points as appropriate to your project, and build your effort in the nourishment category. So if, for example, in some parts of the world, artificial ingredients and food colorings and things like that are already being really regulated, and other parts of the world that maybe not so much. It just depends. And so this is really looking at that, trying to address the issues with refined ingredients, processed foods, artificial ingredients. Part of it also is looking even at portion sizes and education. Mindful eating is one that does very directly impact our design of our spaces, is creating a space and a place that's pleasant, where people want to eat, and maybe they want to eat with community members, their other employees or others, instead of at their desks. So beyond giving ideas for projects, building owners and employers, this is a concept where I think it's interesting that one could apply beyond a project to one's own personal lifestyle. So this could have some lasting effects too, what is learned and experienced in a WELL building. Next up is light. Disruption of the circadian rhythm has been linked with obesity, diabetes, depression, and metabolic disorders. So again, there's some overlap here with some of those diseases, right, that we're struggling with. And so this really points out one of the reasons why light is such an important concept to consider in all of our designs. Disruption or desynchronization of the circadian rhythm can cause a lot of issues, and as we have more and more technology in our lives, it can become an issue with high lighting levels at night, from bright screens. This can contribute to more disruption of the circadian rhythm. And I think it's also good just to be aware and to make this link. A lot of people don't realize that there is an association then to things like breast cancer, metabolic, sleep disorders, and even obesity and diabetes and depression. So once people start to understand a little bit more about these potential impacts, I think this is a really powerful concept and term that more people are becoming familiar with, is this idea of the circadian rhythm. And now we can even address that through our lighting design in our interior environments. But basically, the WELL Light concept aims to provide a lighting environment that reduces this circadian phase disruption and therefore improves your sleep quality, and who doesn't want that, and positively impacts mood and your productivity. So there's kind of a business case for this too, right? The better sleep, the better productivity employees have when their circadian rhythms are not disrupted throughout the day. So basically, the WELL Light concept promotes exposure to light. It aims to create lighting environments that provide visual, mental, and biological health through the design of the space. This is, where we spend the bulk of our time. And if you think about it, natural light does not stay the same throughout the day. It changes and it adapts. There's diffused lighting. It changes color. So these are all things our body, the zeitgebers, are cued into. And when we're in an interior environment where everything's stable and standard and does not change, it can really affect our biological health. And so anything that we can do to integrate daylight with electric light to create lighting strategies that are focused more on human health, as well as thinking about visual acuity and comfort, addressing things like glare and whatnot, can lead to healthier and more productive environments as well. And so this is the summary for the light concept. There are 9 features overall. This one also has the 2 preconditions, and as Doug indicated earlier, just a reminder that those are like prerequisites for each concept. And those include light exposure as well as visual lighting design. So these are kind of baseline exposures and quality lighting that you need to be able to meet. And then there are additional optimizations dealing with such things as I discussed, circadian lighting, looking at glare, which can cause a real issue again as we have more tech in our environments. We have to be considering that. Visual balance, daylight, of course, different daylighting design strategies, and then controls. So really, we're trying to create an environment that reduces circadian phase disruption, improves sleep quality, and positively impacts, right? But if you're familiar with LEED, you'll see that there are a lot of similarities here because we've known for a long time that things like daylight benefit cognitively, right? There's been so many studies. I used to do a lot of K through 12 schools in my practice. And there were so many studies on daylighting and the improvement on learning in students, but this certainly applies to the workspace as well and other environments. And so whatever we can do to make it a more comfortable environment, but also to allow for control, because we're not all the same and we don't work best in all the same light levels and so forth, so that we can make adjustments as we see fit. Then the better off we all are. So with that, I believe it is time to transition and introduce Carolina.
Thank you, Miranda. I have a quick question for you, though.
Okay.
There is one question that came from the audience. It basically she asked, "How can one change with nudging at workplaces, or with eating habit, especially with eating habits or traditions learned at home? Has it?" And also she is curious if it has been tried.
Could you repeat the part about at home?
Like things that we have already done for so many generations, but now
Yeah,
how can we change those with nudging at workplaces?
in the
The eating,
work.
yeah.
Yes. Well, some of it is through, like we said, access. And so you're starting to see a lot more workplaces that are providing healthy snacks. They're providing the concept, and I'm sure many of you have heard the Steelcase concept of the work cafe. An environment where folks can come and learn and with each other and still work together and collaborate, but do it over food, some snacks or drinks or something that are healthier choices. And community does have an impact on our choices, right? Our environment, our social behaviors based off of what others maybe are doing, or you learn from others about what might be appropriate. I think what's interesting about that question is there's also this cultural aspect that could come into play here, where you could really have an opportunity to share different cultural traditions and strategies for healthy eating that others might not know about in the workplace. So I think that's kind of another layer that has potential there that's not maybe directly addressed, but it is this idea of sharing more and providing guidance in a positive light, as opposed to a negative one, right? Like, so it's encouraging people to eat their vegetables, not forcing them to eat it if they want dessert or whatever, like we do with our children. I
Thank
hope
you,
that
Miranda.
answers the question. Yeah.
Let me share mine.
Oh, okay, let me stop sharing.
No, it's okay. It's okay. You can have it too. All right. So thank you, Miranda. And now we have our next speaker, Carolina. Carolina has been, as you can see, Carolina has been also helping with answering the questions on the side. Carolina joined us last year from Argentina. Originally, she's from Argentina. She has so much experience in the Latin American region. Now she has moved to Houston, Texas. She's an architect, currently working as a sustainability consultant. She has been helping her clients obtain international certifications that can help their companies fulfill their ESG goals by demonstrating their commitment to sustainability, promoting the health and well being of building occupants, and enhancing their reputation and business practices. She's also a lead AP, and she's able to use both lead AP and WELL AP credentials to good use in all her projects. Over the past year, she has participated in many projects in Latin American region, monitoring the necessary actions to comply with WELL certification guidelines without compromising the client's commitments. Carolina also earned her architectural degree at the Architecture, Planning and Design Faculty Program in University in Rosario, Argentina, and has gained since then a lengthy experience in commercial and hospitality design and construction. Welcome, Carolina, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. What a worthy presentation. Now, are we seeing the correct slide? Yes. Okay, let's move on to movement concept. Now, though we all understand the importance of fitness, I'm sure that many of you have fitness within their New Year resolution. We are still unable to stay fit. So that's why the WELL certification find this concept very important. If we consider the modern transportation, the labor savings, conveniences, and the sedentary jobs, we have created an environment in which millions of people fail to achieve the minimum level of activity necessary to stay fit. Now, this is a major cause of many diseases like type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndromes, obesity, heart disease, and other chronic conditions. Now, the CDC, which is the Center of Disease Control, define fitness as the ability to carry out daily tasks with vigor and alertness, without undue fatigue, and with ample energy to enjoy leisure time pursuits and respond to emergency. Despite the widely understood benefit of physical activity, up to 2016, the global estimate was 23rd%. Now, a new study, a global estimate of 2022, shows that 80% of the adolescents and 27% of the adult population do not meet the World Health Organization recommendation of level of activity. So it's a worry issue that is getting higher and higher. Now, physical inactivity possesses one of the biggest modern threats to public health. Now, the American College of Sports Medicine, among others, recommend that a healthy adult should engage in at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity and 5 days a week, and a muscle strengthening moderate intensity at least 2 days per week. Now, while the issue of insufficient activity has many sides, one of the factors known to impact physical activity levels is the built environment. Now, the neighborhood walkability, the access to use of mass transit, active transportation, availability to physical activity facilities near the workplace and homes, stair accessibility, which is one of my favorite, in the buildings, active furnishing, and many other factors can affect the physical activity level of an individual. Now, the WELL movement concept promotes physical activity in everyday life through the environmental design, the policies and the programs to ensure that movement opportunities are integrated into the fabric of our culture, the buildings, and the communities. Now, this WELL movement concept also aims to promote, foster physical activity and active building and discourage sedentary behavior by creating and enhancing opportunities through the spaces where we spend our lives. Remember that we spend 90% of the time, of the daytime, inside. So the impact of change in the global physical activity narrative is substantial. So here we have the 10 features of the movement concept. As you can see, there are 2 preconditions, which are the ones that are mandatory if a building wants to get certified, whatever the category. One is active building and communities, and the other one is through design, through interior design, ergonomic workstations design. The other 8 are optimizations. Now, a feature that I always love on the design aspect is the circulation network. So this WELL feature requires a project with to have staircases designed for everyday use and leverage aesthetic, visibility, positioning, and prompts to encourage their use for people to use it. That's one of my favorite. Now, let's jump to the next concept, which is thermal comfort. Now, what is thermal comfort and what does it mean to you? Thermal comfort is defined by the GBRI and the ISO as the condition of mind that expresses satisfaction with a thermal environment and is assessed by subjective evaluation. Now, the thermal comfort, that's the keyword, is subjective, which means that not everyone will be equally comfortable under the same conditions. This highlights that one size fits all approach to thermal comfort in building invariably fails for a large number of people. Now, if you are not satisfied with your thermal comfort, that makes you you're not alone. So in fact, studies have shown that 11% of the office buildings surveyed in the US provided thermal environments that met accepted goals of human satisfaction. So unsurprisingly, as many as 41% of office workers have expressed dissatisfaction with their thermal environment. Now, the WELL thermal comfort concept takes a holistic approach to thermal comfort and provides a combination of research-based interventions to help design buildings and address individual thermal discomfort and support human health, well-being, and productivity. The WELL thermal comfort concept aims to promote human productivity and provide a maximum level of thermal comfort among all buildings users through improved HVAC system design and control and by meeting individual thermal preferences. So under this concept, there are 7 features. Only one is a precondition, the thermal performance of the building. The other 6 are all optimizations, which means that depending on the strategy that you choose for your building will be the amount of points that you will get on the optimizations. Just from the name of these icons, of these features, we have placed some icons. You will see that on our exam prep as well to help us study. So just for the name of these features, you can see what it's about. Each of the features are about, like individual thermal control, radiant thermal control. If instead of using an HVAC system, you use radiant flooring, or you can use both depending on the area. So if you're familiar with LEED rating system, many of these features under this concept, thermal comfort, are synergistic to LEED. We do have a GBRI a course. I'm sure Jeslin can remind or can copy the link later about the synergies between LEED and WELL, because there are many in different in many different of the features. So on this one, there are credits under energy and atmosphere and indoor environmental quality. So that was it for thermal comfort. Now I'll pass the torch to Doug and for his favorite concept.
Thank you, Carolina. Okay, we're going to cover, moving right ahead, we're covering sound and materials and those concepts. So let me share my screen now for this. And I think that would let me know if you can see my notes or not. I hope you can't. Let's see if I can. All right, can we see my screen? Yes?
We see the one with the notes.
You do. All right, I am not sure how to change this. So for the sake of time, if you don't mind, I'll just go forward. Okay, so the next concept is sound.
Gab, do you want me to present?
Why don't you? And then that way it'll be smoother. So let me stop sharing.
Okay.
Is that okay? I'll just say next slide if you don't mind.
I can do that.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Carolina.
Okay, so sound is our next concept. Are we sharing the screen for the concepts? Yes. All right, and so the one that is circled now is sound. And this is an important concept that often we treat noise or sound as a nuisance. And it's really quite more than a nuisance if we think about it. And we'll try to explain a little bit more about how sound impacts us in the interior of our dwellings. So just like thermal comfort, acoustical comfort of a space can be quantified. How do we quantify it? It's the overall level of satisfaction of an occupant in a given environment, whether that's poor acoustics or reasonable acoustics or excellent acoustics. And it depends upon the needs and functionality of the space. Studies have shown exposure to noise sources such as traffic and transportation have been shown to hinder the health and well-being of people in a number of different ways. I talked briefly about that before, that noise is the #2 contributor to the global burden of disease after air pollution. So it's a lot more than just a nuisance or an annoyance, and it's been treated as a nuisance and an annoyance in the health regulations for many, many decades. And so it's becoming much more important now for optimal acoustic quality in the interior of buildings, and also for noise and sound control in the exterior as well, in the environment. So the next slide, we have four important points of interior noise and interior noise quality. Sound within an enclosed space from sources such as the HVAC systems, equipment, vibrating appliances, or other appliances have been shown to hinder productivity just by the vibration and noise that they give off. They also can impair focus because of the noise, the constant noise and hum or drone of equipment from HVAC and appliances. They can impair memory and interfere with retention of memory. And they can also impair mental arithmetic. So this is important in schools, with school children's, universities, libraries, area where people need to do mental calculations. If there's a constant source of noise that is not controlled adequately, it can impair productivity, focus, memory, retention, and mental arithmetic. Next slide. What about exterior noise? So other than interior noise being a major cause of complaints and ultimately dissatisfaction by building occupants, the effects of exterior noise from transportation sources or industrial sources have been linked to health conditions. And these are much more severe, like sleep disturbance, hypertension, and ultimately one of the more serious risks is heart attack and stroke. Believe it or not, extended exposure, long-term exposure to high levels of exterior noise can result in serious cardiovascular disease. And that's mediated through a very complex system of effects, of health effects through the stress response. It's not about hearing loss now that we're talking about. We're talking about long-term effects where sleep is constantly disturbed because of exterior noise that penetrates the building, and that results in deregulation of the blood pressure. The blood pressure is normally regulated by a healthy night's sleep each night. If it's disrupted, then that internal regulation doesn't occur, and that already then creates a risk factor for high blood pressure. So all of these risk factors combined, and then if you add to those other health risk factors like obesity or diabetes, they can, which have nothing to do with noise, of course, but they can be linked to heart disease. So I just wanted to point out the importance of noise. And in fact, I should say that there is now a study or new studies that are linking noise to diabetes. So it might have to do with sleep disturbance. And if you've ever been awake at 3 or 4 in the morning and can't get back to sleep because you heard a noise outside, you're probably more likely to eat more and have hunger at an earlier time in the day. So I can see the link. I haven't looked at the papers lately, but I think that would be very interesting to look at the link between noise and diabetes. So let's talk about acoustic issues in the internal environment within an office building, for example. Acoustic problems are a leading source of dissatisfaction with the office environment. And so in addition to noise from airborne sources like HVAC and vibrating equipment and ventilation, we get noise from adjacent activities. That could be mechanical equipment, that could be exercise equipment, and that could be bothering workers or employees nearby. And another common acoustical issue is lack of privacy between spaces. That would relate to inadequate insulation or sound barriers within the walls and interior spaces in a building. So I'm sure we've all been in a situation where conversations in the next office or the next room can be readily heard, or could at least be partially heard between offices. And that creates a problem with not only privacy and confidentiality, but a distraction from general tasks. Next slide. Another issue with sound quality in a building is the ability to understand speech. So we call this speech intelligibility. And that refers to how well someone can be understood when they're speaking. And if that is compromised by excessive noise within a building, then that becomes a problem for the speaker or the presenter to be heard due to certain frequencies of vibration that are interfering with his or her speech and the listener's ability to understand that speech. Let's go to the next one. So the sound concept aims to provide a comprehensive, holistic approach to addressing the concerns of acoustical comfort through research-based design considerations that buildings can accommodate for the purposes of improving occupant health and well-being. So let's look at the features. There are only 6 in the sound concept, and there's only one precondition to meet. That's a requirement again, as we've mentioned, and that's sound mapping. In other words, when we get deeper into the course in the subsequent weeks, we will learn how to actually understand which rooms and which zones in buildings need to be classified or can be classified as quiet zones or mixed zones or loud zones. And so that's sound mapping. That's the first precondition, is to understand where these zones of loudness, varying degrees of loudness, exist, so that we can create some buffers for those, or barriers. So let me give you an example of, this is one of the optimization sound barriers. So we've all seen sound barriers along highways, perhaps, to buffer highway noise to residential neighborhoods. But in the interior of buildings, sound barriers are quite interesting and useful. And there was some talk a few minutes ago about synergies. And synergies is an important point in the WELL building standard, where we can gain points towards WELL certification levels based on meeting different optimizations across different concepts. So let's look at an example of this. A green sound wall. Well, we know what a sound wall is: sound barrier to deflect or reflect sound, so that it goes from an area where it's generated and is reflected away from an area where it's not wanted. So a green sound wall can, in a building, can buffer areas from unwanted noise, while at the same time providing aesthetically pleasing green space and air filtration from pollutant particle deposition on the green sound wall foliage. So that would be a synergy with not only the air concept, because we can get pollutant deposition on green foliage, and it would also be a synergy with the mind concept for the green space of the building. while at the same time performing the primary function of deflecting unwanted noise. Let's go on to the next concept that I will cover, and that's materials. So in materials, okay, whether it's construction, or renovation, pest control, cleaning supplies, these chemicals are ubiquitous in not only in the environment, but also in the interior of buildings, whether they're stored or utilized in buildings and construction. So the chemicals industry is integral to a number of sectors, including the construction industry, and has played a major role in improving our quality of life. The expression is better living through chemistry. That is so true. However, where do you dispose of some of those chemicals is a problem. So many chemicals that were ubiquitously used in the past have now been found or recently been found to be toxic, and they're also persistent in the environment, and they can bioaccumulate. And so an example of this, PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, which were used in the wire and electric insulation industry as an insulator for many, many years. They've often been disposed of in the environment, and when buildings are raised or demolished to make room for new construction. And those chemicals are persistent. They bioaccumulate through fish and through wildlife, and ultimately can find their way into human exposure too. So that's just one particular example of one of these so-called legacy chemicals. Let's go to the next slide. Other legacy chemicals that I just mentioned, PCBs, are lead, asbestos, mercury, and a chemical known as CCA, which is chromated copper arsenate. So these have various uses in building and construction. Lead paint, for example, which is no longer permitted in the United States, is a concern. And that concern was health-based, because when paint would chip as it aged, children would eat the paint chips and be exposed to lead. And that was a very unfortunate but common health risk in the 70s and 60s, 70s, and 80s in the United States. And it's been mitigated since. Asbestos is another legacy chemical that's been used as an insulator, and we know that that's linked to a certain type of lung cancer, mesothelioma. In fact, it's the only definitive link between a single chemical and a single type of cancer. So any case of mesothelioma is directly related to asbestos exposure. And then we have mercury, of course, in lamps and fluorescent lamps. And CCA is a wood treatment chemical that was widely used as a biocide in the construction industry, and that can be leached into the soil. So these are legacy chemicals that are ubiquitous in the environment. So for your exam, when you take the WELL AP exam, you'll certainly see these chemicals for sure in many of the questions, and they will likely appear in more than one feature. They do appear in more than one feature of the materials concept, as you'll see when we summarize this in a few slides. Let's go to the next slide. So legacy chemicals, which we've mentioned, continue to pose dangers, even though many of them have been banned or outlawed in certain countries. It's through their environmental fate and their transport in the environment that lead to deaths. And in fact, lead exposure itself accounted for an estimate of 1 million deaths in 2017. And I think we know that lead leaching from pipes in Flint, Michigan was a global health scare that has still not been completely mitigated. I believe that much of that community had to switch to bottled water, and the pipes were leaching lead when the water source was changed to a lower pH source. So this is a global health priority, lead, in terms of its control, even places where it's regulated, like the United States. Let's go to the next slide. The WELL materials concept aims to reduce human exposure to these materials and others, whether it's direct exposure or through environmental contamination, and to chemicals that may impact health during construction, remodeling, furnishing, and operation of buildings, such as dust or de-leading or asbestos removal in the building trade. So the WELL concept requires projects to assess the presence of these compounds and take measures to prevent their exposure to humans, along with restrictions for those products in new materials for new building products. So testing, remediation, redevelopment of sites contaminated with those legacy chemicals and many other toxic pollutants is encouraged in order to support environmentally responsible growth and preventing sprawl. Let's go to the features slide for materials. And under this concept, there are a total of 11 features. 3 are preconditions required at the top, shaded in gray. And those relate back to the legacy chemicals that I spoke about a few minutes ago. And the other 8 are optimizations, which are, again, optional. And you'll notice that CCA, lead, and HAZ materials management are the preconditions. And those relate back to some of the legacy chemicals because they are so ubiquitous and toxic in the environment and were so common for many decades and are now under a large scrutiny for their restriction, control, and remediation. And I think that will push us on to the next concept, which is mind and community. And that goes back to Miranda. Yes?
Wonderful. Thank you, Doug.
You're welcome.
I'm going to have to do a quick switch of screens probably again here for a moment. There, are you seeing the correct version without the notes? Okay, perfect. And here we have mind. So I found it really interesting that as we asked about what health means to you, how frequently mental health was mentioned. I think this is something that is more prominently in our minds. It's in the forefront now, and especially I think since the pandemic, you know, many people refer to the second pandemic, the mental health pandemic that we've been struggling with since then, both in our youth and in really in all ages and all over the globe. This has been a broad impact, and so the WELL building standard had already begun to address how this could really be more positively impacted by the environments we spend all of our time in, right? So this concept addresses the human mind, which we're so fascinated with. We're still learning about day in, day out. There's still so much more to learn, but we keep studying it. And if anybody's interested in some of the resources out there in related to this, it's going to take a lot of combination and interdisciplinary efforts to truly understand. You need the scientists and the psychologists and that understand the mind, and then you need the designers that really understand the building and how to potentially promote mental health through building design decisions every day. And there is an organization that does a combination of this, which is called the Academy of Neuroscience for Architecture. So if you've never heard of them before, it's a great resource to follow up on. But they really look at neuroscience and impacts, but engage architecture and design architects and designers in that discussion and in that process to see what we can do to impact. As a quote by John Milton says, "The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven." Right? So a lot happens in the mind, perhaps that is beyond our control, but we also know that there's a lot that we do, a lot of the decisions that we make in our environments that do impact and can have an impact. And so just when IWBI is looking at these, you know, we've discussed before, we've referenced how this is all evidence-based design and research, right? So where these concepts come from and the issues that are at hand are from, you know, global statistics and evidence that's found through research. And so we do know that mental health and substance use conditions collectively account for about 13% of the global burden of disease. You know, there's alcohol use, there's tobacco use, contributing to deaths and so forth. But really, mental health is determined by a range of socioeconomic, biological, and environmental factors, such as work conditions, lifestyle, as well as health behaviors. And so what we can do when we're looking at the building, as well as through policies, is find ways that that we can change those work conditions, make them more positive, address some concerns such as these, which are big ones. Depression is associated with an increase in risk of diseases, including diabetes, cancer, and cardiovascular disease. Asthma's in there too. A lot of people don't necessarily know about this association, but we're learning more about it every day. People with mental health conditions experience a mortality rate 2.2 times higher than the general population. And this is a growing population overall, right? That we want to be concerned with, that are using our buildings every day. So as we think about an estimated 14.3% of deaths worldwide, that's approximately 8 million people per year, are attributed to mental health conditions. This is an area where we can make a broad and lasting impact. So I think the question earlier discussed about what happens, you know, in the connection between home and the workplace and so forth. And this is one of those areas where you do see a lot of overlap between that. We have other lives, we have our personal health issues, we have our family concerns, we have all these other things, right, that are on our minds. And the more that we can address that and think about ways to support users in these environments, then maybe they can focus and be their best when they're, whether it's at work or play. So WELL also looks at impacts, right? And so in this case, the WELL Mind concept promotes mental health through policies, as we mentioned, programmatic strategies and design strategies. And all of these work to address the diverse factors that influence both, you know, cognitive and emotional well-being. It's all a part of our holistic well-being after all. And so here we refer to another old quote, right? That a sound mind in a sound body, right? Mental health is a state of well-being in which we are able to live to our fullest potential, that we can cope with stresses of life. Those are probably going to be a given in some way, shape, or form, that we're able to work productively, and then we're able to contribute to our communities as well. And so mental health is a fundamental component of human health, as we can all recognize, across all stages of life. And it's vital. Really, it connects to the physical and social well-being of all individuals and communities, especially if you think about stress and so forth. You know, there's a lot of research out there about the pain body and how stresses, mental stresses show up in the physical body itself as well. Under this concept, we have 11 features. 2 are preconditions: mental health promotion and nature and place. Nature and place is one where you may have heard of the concept of biophilic design. Biophilic design strategies really come into play here, where we incorporate and integrate elements of nature into our interior environments. We know for a fact there's research that shows we heal faster. We are more joyful. We are more open. There's so many benefits to our integration and connection with nature based off of basically the hypothesis of biophilia and our relationship to nature, which we are a part of. And so not having too much separation from that which we are needing the connection and ties to through nature, but creative ways in which our schools, our offices, our hospitals can encourage that on a daily basis. And in more urban environments, you know, it can be more difficult to have that outdoor physical, you know, actual outdoor connection as frequently. And that's why it becomes more important to consider how we can include these in our interior environments. Other areas, policy-based features and optimizations here such that address stress. We're looking at work hours sometimes. We're also thinking about paid time off and, you know, other policies, health education, providing restorative programming through, and these are often referencing to businesses and business owners, what you can do for your employees. And also restorative spaces. So restorative spaces are where so many of the other WELL concepts can come into play, really thinking strategically about light and thinking about sound as Doug referenced earlier, thinking about other elements of indoor air quality and so forth as well. And then support. A lot of it's about support services too. So if tobacco cessation is a helpful resource for someone, substance use support and services, these are all things that can really truly benefit the mental health of many individuals in our environments. For the next concept, we transition to community. And you know, it's again, I think, a unique feature and concept that WELL has incorporated in here, but it's so important that realizing the community and the diverse network and web that we all hold in our environments is really, really critical. The global, national, and local conditions that impact the health of each individual in a community is known as the social determinants of health. And a big piece of that pie are the physical and social networks of individuals. It includes the physical and built environment that we might be involved with designing or spending our time in every day. So many people struggle with this, and how can our environments consider all walks of life? One of the questions earlier addressed this, right? We have diverse abilities, we have diverse backgrounds and identities, and hopefully we can all design an environment that's inclusive and considering all those unique needs. So it's not just accommodating, it's enabling, right? It's really encouraging, and it's thriving, that all individuals participate and thrive within the systems and structures of this community, and therefore shape individual and collective health and well-being outcomes. Again, this is research-based, right? We do know that a lot of these design decisions can impact our communities from the mind, as we talked about last time, and then into their larger, broader community and through their social network. This concept of community addresses equity and social cohesion. Promoting community well-being must begin with the supporting of the fundamental factors, really, of individual and collective health. So again, we talked about how, you know, there is a lot of social influences in our decisions and in our ability to feel like we belong and we contribute and we're valued. And so some of these things are addressed in community, and there was a little transition here you might have seen. Those of you that are familiar with version 1, I won't go into this a lot, but there are some transitions, and this is one area that was transitioned between version 1 and version 2. And many features are still addressed, but they've just been spread amongst different ones. And so there was a little overlap here in version 2 of what was in mind before. But essentially, what we're looking at is aiming to support access to things like essential healthcare, building a culture of health that accommodates diverse population needs. And as I mentioned before, establishing an inclusive and engaged occupant community. So a lot of the community features do address more policy-based decisions. These might not directly impact building design per se, but they're very influential in an overall occupant's experience. And so thinking about making sure that organizations have emergency preparedness, that they're promoting health and wellness, that they're utilizing surveys to determine how effective some of the design strategies and policies have been in promoting health and wellness. Some of the things that I could relate to is when I was a new mother and one of the only women initially in an architecture firm, things like new mother support and so forth were a little bit more rare back then, you know, having lactation support spaces and considering travel and all those sorts of things. This is what WELL looks at and really encourages design strategies around, but also policy, and recognizing that the mother is not the only parent. So there's a lot of new parent support looking at all parents involved and families. And then another really important one, I believe, is looking at diversity and inclusion, as well as accessibility and universal design. If we design a great space, and it's healthy and it includes all these wellness features, and everyone can access it, then I don't know if we've been successful in our attempts here, have we? So the intent is to really think of a broad audience and design for all. So as you can see here, really there's a lot of synergy between community and other concepts too. And there's occupant surveys, for example, will address many of the other concepts within WELL. And then you can also think about when you develop a policy that there might be some of those that might touch on other areas or concepts of WELL also. It's a very broad, in many ways, as the term community denotes, right? It's really looking at the outreach and the expanded impacts that the WELL building standard can have. This is some highlights again of a few of these. One I did not mention was community access and engagement, as well as bathroom accommodations and so on and so forth. And with that, I believe, is it Jeslin joining next?
Yes, thank you, Miranda.
Wonderful. Okay.
Let me share my right screen. Right. Can you all see the screen which says innovation? Perfect. All right. Thank you, Miranda, Doug, and Carolina for walking us through all the 10 concepts. And I believe we are almost close at 1:30 now. So we may run a few minutes, I think, at least 15, 20 minutes. If you guys are okay, please stay. Otherwise, I completely understand. We are recording the session and you will get a recording of this webinar where we explore more on what are we doing at GBRI with respect to WELL. Like Carolina mentioned, we have a library of courses on WELL version 2. We call it Wellopedia. Then we have some crosswalk documents that crosswalk between LEAD and WELL, and of course, exam prep. So now that we have explored all 10 concepts, let's talk a little bit about innovation. So I'll be quick with my slides. Innovation is not a health intervention itself, but it touches on all the other concepts and rewards projects for being innovative, coming up with innovative ideas. Just like LEAD, WELL is also consensus-based, where they are not saying you should stop with these preconditions. Every time it is evolving, they're welcoming new ideas. Just like, as you can see from the questions asked today, some of these questions are from cultural perspective. We don't actually have a one fit for all answer, right? And that is something we have to acknowledge, and we have to brainstorm on a project by project basis to come up with the best solution. And this is where innovation comes really handy. Just like LEAD, within LEAD, there is a lead in innovation in design and operation. WELL encourages and rewards projects for innovative ideas. So on the screen, you are looking at let me see if it is the right screen. You're looking at a list of, what is that you see, Carolina? Are you seeing a list of the optimizations? No,
Not
okay.
yet. One more. Now, yeah.
All right. All right. So there are 5 optimizations and which are optional. There are no prerequisites or preconditions. First one is innovative idea. Second one is if you have a WELL AP on the project, then the project gets 1 point. And of course, they also reward projects that are pursuing other rating systems. This is incredibly important because, as many of you noticed and asked in the beginning, many of us here are LEAD professionals or professionals with other credentials, with traditional sustainability credentials, I would call, LEAD or Green Globes. WELL stands out a little bit out of that because WELL looks at the wellness of the occupants, and hence I believe WELL complements LEAD, BRIAM, and other green building rating systems. So if you have a project that pursuing LEAD and WELL, then the project would get 5 extra points under that category. So in summary, launched in 2014, we believe WELL it's come a long way with presence in more than 125 countries. WELL version 2 is designed to work with all types of buildings, from commercial buildings to warehouses to stadiums to hotels and hospitals. And as Carolina pointed out in the chat, they have also started a new soft version for residential projects. So this is something that we are looking forward to, and we would share the link with you for those of you interested to learn more about WELL for residential. So that's something that WELL came up with recently. So in short, in summary, the WELL version 2 building standard is designed to be equitable, global, proposing interventions that are feasible, achievable, and relevant across many applications throughout the world. Evidence-based, scientifically, scientific studies used, technically robust, customer-focused, and resilient, keeping pace with advances in research, science, technology, and society. On the screen now, you're looking at a WELL scorecard. If you're familiar with LEAD scorecard, it's almost something like that, where you can see all the credits or preconditions and optimizations in one place. This is something projects could use to check which credits they are pursuing. Yes, no, maybe so, and use it to as a navigation tool throughout the project. Now that we have a good understanding of all the WELL concepts, here is a quick roadmap that brings all the elements together. So if you think about this, this could be applied to a one project or a group of projects on a campus. So if you think about this, you can see you start with the project and then you use the WELL building standard to implement some of the features in design and construction. Then you prepare and submit the documentation for review, and GBCI is the third-party reviewer here. Just like LEAD, GBCI is the same organization that does the review for documentation. And what stands out here is the performance verification by a third party approved by GBCI or approved by GBCI. It could be GBCI or an approved by GBCI to do the third party verification, finally leading to WELL certification in one of the 4 levels: bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. So now, once you are certified, you can proudly say that this particular building, it has a 73% positive impact on building release rate, 62% positive impact on building value, and 79% positive impact on occupant satisfaction. These are from some studies done by different groups, which were published by the International WELL Building Institute. So now, if you are interested to become a WELL AP, I see that we had around 400 registrants, and on the call we had 200 plus. If you are interested to become a WELL AP, this is the segment we'll talk about that. So what is a WELL AP? A WELL credential shows your expertise in the WELL building standard, and also that you are a health and wellness advocate. In addition, WELL AP is an individual who assists projects navigate through the WELL certification process. So you are essentially like a GPS, guiding the projects throughout the life cycle of the project through design and construction to make the project as fit as possible for WELL certification. And as you saw earlier, inclusion of a WELL AP on a project also assists it to earn an extra point under innovation. And what are the eligibility conditions to become a WELL AP? Technically, there are none other than the age requirement. Candidates must be 18 years or older. WELL project experience is recommended. However, it is not a requirement. Now, is this the right credential for me? As many of you have continuously asked during today's chat, some have asked, I'm already lead green associate, should I go next? Before I share my thoughts, I am curious to hear about our speakers. So first, I'm going to ask this to Miranda here. So, it's, of course, Miranda, thank you so much for joining us. Your dual role as a clinical associate professor and the director of interior architecture within the University of Idaho, and coupled with your, certification in interior design, I think you can bring a unique perspective. So what motivated you to add WELL accreditation to your list of credentials? That's first question. Second is, in your experience as an interior designer and educator, how has WELL influenced your approach and philosophy? And furthermore, from your interaction with students, what trends or shifts are you observing in the health and wellness movement within the academic sphere?
Okay, well, I guess starters for myself and my direction, I was in practice for just less shy of a decade, and during that time was when I first came across the LEED rating system, and I just believe, and CHIPS as well, and I just believe that rating systems are a really great way to, again, do a nudge theory to hopefully encourage and inform many of the design decisions and impacts that we have in the built environment. And so I've been a LEED accredited professional for about 20 years. But what really interested me in it, and what really in my career has drawn me towards more interior architecture and design, is the impacts on people. I was very fascinated in making sure that all the decisions that I made and the basically what we put in our buildings hopefully positively impacts the users, not at least doesn't negatively impact the users. And so it was about raising awareness for myself in practice, and then later on as an educator, hopefully raising awareness amongst the students, which are future designers that are going to be making these decisions for all of us. And I think that students are more savvy and aware of much of this than ever before. I mentioned the mental health factor. Many of these students are ones that were in school during the pandemic, and many struggled with it, and they saw the value of community, and they saw the value of engagement, and so forth. So I think what you're going to see is with this group moving forward into the workplace, into practice, and expanding into our communities, is that they do want to have well spaces. Jeslin, earlier you mentioned, the business case for this. So from whether you're a business owner, real estate developer, whomever it might be, there's a really strong business case that was made for why you might consider some of these strategies in your buildings and developments. But I think that the new workforce will be looking for those things too. They might have higher expectations in the workplace, and we know with hybrid, if people have the choice maybe to work remotely or in a hybrid environment, what can we do to really make them want to come into these spaces, and having them be more pleasant and designed for health and well-being, and have all those sorts of perks like that, then that could be a really good recruitment tool too.
Thank you, Miranda. Quite inspiring journey, and thank you for the valuable insight. Now, I would like to turn my attention to Doug. Doug, with his experience working in more than 50 countries and all this credentials, and latest his PhD, with your impressive array of credentials, I am particularly interested in your decision to pursue WELL certification, WELL accreditation first. Could you also share what inspired you to embark on this journey? You mentioned you from LEED Green Associate, you went to WELL AP and not LEED AP, right? And additionally, how do you foresee the WELL principles shaping the future of sustainable design in your area of expertise?
Thank you, Jeslin. So my interest really grew out of environmental engineering into environmental health. And my focus is more on the nexus between environmental quality and human health. And so I don't typically get too involved in construction or design and architecture and structural engineering. I'm more on the environmental engineering side. So there may be civil engineers in the audience of attendees today. I'm sure there are probably a few. There may be mechanical engineers. And as we know that civil and mechanical engineers do have in their practice construction and building and some selection materials, for example. So there's quite a lot of overlap with the building trade. My focus is more on the environmental side of civil engineering. So that led me more towards air pollutants and water quality and other environmental stressors like noise. So when I needed to make a decision after earning my LEED Green Associate as to whether or not to go into more LEED accreditation to get a LEED AP, for example, or to get a WELL AP, I chose WELL. Of course, it would be great to have both. And there may be attendees that want to have both. And now with synergies between WELL and LEED, which is a new development, it might be even more beneficial to have both certifications. But I wanted to have more focus on the wellness aspect of the field. And also for engineers, there's typically a professional engineering license and really not many other certifications. So this is an area in which to gain additional accreditation and certification for engineers that are interested in the building trade and building wellness. So that's my motivation. As far as overlaps with the WELL movement and sustainable engineering practices, absolutely. I mentioned some green noise walls. This is where historically we've looked at construction and building and I would say as really monolithic. The buildings have to have a certain shape, design, look, feel, because it was easier to get materials that were shaped rectangularly, for example, for boxes, window fittings, doors, sills, flooring. Now we have a lot more aesthetics in design, so buildings can really take on a number of different shapes today, and that can be used for more aesthetic improvement in the interior of the building as well. And I think that that's going to become a trend as far as, not boxy spaces anymore, but merely more eye appealing, more conducive for break time, relaxation, for productivity in buildings. That's one. In terms of other sustainable efforts, certainly now with energy, getting back to LEED, with solar and wind, self-sufficient buildings and sustainable energy for buildings, net zero buildings, and it's not just about cost savings. It's also about doing good for the environment in terms of not producing pollutants from a building, not adding any more to the carbon footprint that's already necessary. And that ties back into the wellness and sustainability movement too. And so that's covered under some of the WELL features too. So there's quite a lot of overlap in terms of sustainability, engineering, and WELL, and then even tie in with synergies with LEED as well too.
Thank you, Doug. I think, your response definitely resonates with me as an engineer. And I also want to congratulate you on your recent PhD. So now, I think we can call Doug Liffer as Dr. Liffer, I guess.
Thank you.
Hey, Doctor.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Doug. All right, so next I have Carolina. Carolina is, as I mentioned previously, her extensive travel experience spanning from Argentina to Houston, Texas, and roles ranging from an architect in the Latin American region to a sustainability consultant and WELL AP. I think she provides a rich background. Could you share some insights about your journey towards WELL accreditation A, and B, also you have seen both regions. You have seen the growth in the Latin American region and now being in North America. So where do you see the market is heading, and what were some of your motivation behind pursuing WELL AP?
So for me, the path was a bit different because having an architecture degree in Latin America doesn't mean that I can be an architect everywhere worldwide. So being a family of a bit of globetrotters living here and there, I decided to go with an AP instead of the WELL AP, instead of having to validate my architectural degree wherever we were. And I chose the WELL AP. I'm also a lead AP. I was a lead GA, then a lead AP, which gave me a lot of experience with the building, sustainability building itself. But for me, WELL was the mind concept and the movement concept and all those concepts that in Latin America we take for granted, because I come from Rosario, but also lived in Buenos Aires and in other big cities, and our transportation is great. In Argentina, we have the biggest amount statistics proven of psychologists in the country. So therapy is like going to the supermarket, like everybody does it. And here in the US is a bit of a taboo. So I loved it. I loved when the mind concept came to me, and then the movement concept with going, using public transportation and all that. That's why I chose to become a WELL AP. And well, the design, of course, because it's what I love the most, going up and down the stairs and putting music on the stairs, and art, and bringing all those local patterns or local designs or handcrafts into the design of the interiors of the offices or whatever is the building that we're designing. That will also help the credits on WELL. I really like it. I really love this certification. That's why I enjoy so much being a WELL AP.
Thank you, Carolina. So as you all heard, we heard three perspectives: to an architect, an interior designer, an engineer, how they chose WELL AP and why they chose it. I'm a civil engineer, just like Doug mentioned. My journey started with LEED, and then I went to LEED AP. And after becoming a USGBC education provider, I got LEED AP, BDNC, O&M, and then when WELL came by, I think in 2014 or something, I thought this looks really interesting. I read through the whole section. I felt like this is something unique, which is something no one has talked about it before. The wellness of occupants was always like, yeah, So that is what I thought would be the next. And I think I did a right bet, because after 2015, I think IWBI got the fastest growing company. It shows that it's being catching up around the world. It's growing rapidly, and you can also see the leadership between USGBC and IWBI. The same leadership, they believe in these principles, and they have also started in integrating equity into it. So there's also an equity rating that WELL has introduced. So I'm a strong proponent for many of these things. So as you know, GBRI supports climate change, social equity, environmental justice. So I felt like this was the right moment to integrate all of that. And we are in the process of trying to come up with courses that talks about not just LEED, but LEED, WELL, other rating systems. So I always believe that let good thoughts come from all sides. These are all tools. We don't have to confine ourselves to one room. When you can travel across the globe, get all the good thoughts, and you can apply those thoughts on your projects, big and small. That's just my thinking. Now, do you think you are a WELL AP, or you can become a WELL AP? As you can see on the screen, there is no one profession that is they're limiting it to. You could be a professor, a teacher, a strategist, a project manager, an accountant, senior planner, president. So this is a word cloud from IWBI that shows where the WELL APs come from. So if you consider yourself as a leader in your industry, and if you're committed to placing health and wellness at the core of building design and performance and operation, then WELL AP credential may be a right fit for you. And just like I mentioned previously, it's a tool, just like the LEED AP credential. It's a toolkit where you get to apply the lessons learned from it on your projects, small and large, in your and in your personal lives. So that's one application I also saw with WELL, is that many of the things that you learn in WELL building design can be applied in your personal lives also, like nourishment, movement, mind. Some of the studies that are fascinating, and you feel like, wow, that now it makes sense why I am staying up when I am watching something on my phone right before I go to sleep. So that is something, then have a scientific backing behind certain behavior patterns. So what's next? So here are some tools that I want to show that GBRI has. So we have courses on exam prep as well as WELL CE. So on the screen, you're looking at some of them. One is I'm doing WELL version 2, are you? And then we have WELL AP exam prep, which is on demand. And then we also have a program where we call it Study with a WELL Faculty, live online WELL AP exam prep. So I'm super excited for this year's exam prep series, which are going to be led by Miranda, Doug, and Carolina, three faculty members who will be leading the session from January through the end of December. It's a holistic approach where we look at all the concepts, and we also have a WhatsApp group where we answer student questions, be it registration with the exam, to preparing for the modules, to mock exams, things like that. We also have a series called Velopedia series, which is perfect for WELL APs who got accreditation under the previous version. So this introduces you to the new modules under WELL version 2, the new concepts and things like that. And lastly, we are growing our WELL case study series where we look at projects. For instance, during our chat, I saw someone mention a LinkedIn building where they have a staircase, which was, I think, they had a name for it. I'm curious for that project. I'm gonna look it up and see how can we make a case study on such projects. So I always feel case studies would help you get ideas. It inspires you. Also, it's a huge area for continuing education. we have a program called GBRI Wellness Ambassador. It's a digital program. Right now, anyone who completes our exam prep, WellAP exam prep or Wellopedia series are eligible to earn this digital badge. We are planning to grow this further by incorporating more courses on climate change, climate justice, because I feel like there are synergies between all these things. And if we can combine them together, then students could earn CE from this badge program. They can also display this badge on their LinkedIn profile. This is not a replacement for the WellAP credential, but this is just something a complement your accomplishment in the wellness industry. So on the screen, you're looking at a 6-week roadmap for the WellAP exam prep. These are the sessions which are going to be led by Doug, Carolina, and Miranda. So we'll start with the certification overview. I saw some students ask today's session about review, performance verification. Those would be covered by Doug in one of the sessions. Then we'll have each module we'll go through in depth about what happens within the AIR module, some all the preconditions, optimizations, and then practice questions, followed by 3 mock exams that you can take at your own pace. And of course, as I mentioned, the biggest support I have felt is the WhatsApp group where students ask questions, and past students who have passed, they would sometimes, give their response. So, for instance, Carolina and Doug were students of our first batch, a couple of years ago. I'm so proud to say that they are both now faculty members and they are leading this movement. So this is just a slideshot of what is there in the exam prep, live sessions, 400 plus practice questions, 3 mock exams with a study group on WhatsApp. And here are some testimonials from our students in the past. You can see they all have earned their WellAP. So far, we have a 100% pass rate on our WellAP exam prep. So we continue to hope that we'll keep it up in 2024 and years to come. And you can see all these testimonials on our website. Now, I would love for you to support this course. If you could share a course review on one of these platforms, Google, Trustpilot, or Facebook. The past, we shied away from taking public testimonials, but now we are understanding the importance of social proofing. So we are requesting our users to rate us on some of these public channels. And your feedback is incredibly valuable. It's a small business focused on democratizing sustainability education. We greatly rely on the voices of our students. And your feedback, to show our appreciation to your feedback, we would offer you a 10% discount on GBRI tuition for each review, up to a maximum of 30% discount on these classes, including the exam prep. So I will send the link to all of you today. Let me see if I can copy this link and paste it in the chat. But right now we have 133 attendees. So if you have time, I would love to play the Kahoot game. Let me know in the Q&A if you are up for it. It's a quick game. It'll take 5 minutes. How many of you are familiar with the Kahoot? So let's see. We'll start with there.
I am. Does it count?
Okay, so let me just start it then. Okay, in the meantime, I'm also going to include this link to review us. Perfect. Right. I'm going to share my screen again. So this is the page where you would register for the exam prep if you are planning to. So I'm going to send this link to also in the chat. Okay, that way you have all the links. And of course, we will send it in a follow-up email with links to everything, including how to get your certificates and the handout. I see some of you actually asked for a PDF, so we will definitely share that. All right, so let me now open Kahoot. All right, so if you can grab your smartphone and type in kahoot.it and then enter the number that you see on the screen. Okay, so let's see. Gonna start. The number is 323-086. All right. Oh, I see people are already joining. Arun, Danny, Amen, thank you. For some reason, if you're not able to join the Kahoot, you can always enter your answer choices in the Q&A. All right. So we have 30 updates. This is going. I'm going to start now. Ready? So first couple of questions are just to test so that you can see how this works. So you use your phone to answer all your choices, okay? So where are you joining from? Please type in your location.
Salvador City.
All right, let's see. We have Colorado, Boston, Colorado, Lagos, Denver. Wow, San Francisco,
India.
Mexico, Canada, Maryland, India, Texas, Miami, Kuwait, Quebec.
Oh, we have an
Turkey.
Italian.
Right, we also have Costa Rica. Nice. Now you got a feel of how this works. Next is also a word cloud. 3 words that come to your mind when you see or hear the word well or wellness. Curious now because after you took the class. Happy, health, diet, fitness, mental health, strong, organic kind, healthy, mental health. So we can definitely see a mixture of all the things that we talked about today. Thank you. So now starts the actual quiz. Ready? How big is the global health and wellness market? Is it 1.5 trillion? Is it 3.2? Or is it 5.6 trillion? have 12 correct answers. The right answer is 5.6 trillion. I'm sorry, others made a slight mistake. I can see it could be misleading, but 5.6 trillion is the right answer. Oh, I see that Doug is leading there. Right, followed
I
by
got the
Evie.
Dr. Doug.
I know. You got it? Okay, nice work, Carolina. Well, version 2 comprises of how many concepts? 7, 8, 9, 10. Nice, we got 27 right answers, 10 concepts. It used to be 8 in the past, 7 in the past, but now it's 10 concepts under version 2.
We have 4 students that didn't pay attention, which is great. From 202, that's a good statistic.
All right, next question. People spend approximately dash percentage of their time in enclosed spaces. Is it 50%, 60, 70, or 90%? All right, the right answer is 90%. All right, so we see Gerardo is topping now, followed by Daniela and Riley and Will and Tunde. True or false? Food production remains one of the largest contributors to global environmental change. Nice. 32 right answers. That's good. Food production continue to remain one of the largest contributors to global environmental change, as Miranda touched upon it. All right, Geraldo is keeping the lead. Daniela is closely following. Well, complements lead BRIAM and other green building rating systems. True or false? Oh, well, I see the answers is going so fast. Nice work. True. Well, complements lead BRIAM and other green building rating systems. Very close. All right. Disruption of the circadian rhythm has been linked with obesity, diabetes, depression, and metabolic disorders. Is it true or false? Wow, we got this right. Nice. I think the cat picture definitely helped. All right. Still, Gerardo is leading. Very close now with just 4 points. Daniela is second. The American College of Sports Medicine advises healthy adults to do dash minutes of moderate aerobic activity 5 days a week. Is it 15, 30, 60, 45? 30 minutes is the right answer. The American College of Sports Medicine advises healthy adults to do 30 minutes of moderate aerobic activity 5 days a week. Well, we just saw Danilo dropped out. Gerardo is still making the lead. True or false? Innovation is not a well concept, but it touches on all the other concepts and rewards projects for innovating ideas. Nicely done. Innovation is not a well concept, so that was it was not listed as one of the 10 concepts, but it complements and it works with all other concepts. Gerardo is keeping his lead. Now we have a new contender, Will. Last question. Which of the following is true about WELL version 2? Global, resilient, evidence-based, all of the above. the above. Now let's see the final leaderboard. Tunde is number 3. Will is number 2. I guess Sharara kept the lead.
Congrats.
Wonderful. And we
What
have
happened to the
runner-up.
dog?
I guess Doc was not paying attention. All right. Thank you so much for joining this. So I'm going to stop the screen now. Thank you for staying with us. I see that we have right now 90 participants. So it's 50% of the participants had to leave because originally we had scheduled 1.5 hours. As you can see, when you have passionate speakers, when they talk about topics that they're passionate about, sometimes we forget about the time, which could be a good thing when you're learning from the experts for exam prep. So I really hope that you would sign up for exam prep. So I'm going to send the link in the email also. Otherwise, we wish you the best in your wellness journey, and we hope that our paths cross. And I think we have answered all the questions live during our session. If there's anything else you want to ask, you can come off the microphone now and you may ask.